揺れた予感だ世界にだんだん僕は好きと思って見えなくなって見つけないで僕のことを見つめないで
Hello everybody, it's me, your friendly neighborhood, and today we're talking about SK once again. I'm pretty sure you guys remember I did a video, well, 2 videos, tackling one of his points in his disastrous storytelling video, basically about a very minuscule nitpick he had about the police towers in the game, where I'll boil it down, but I'll also link the videos off in the description so you guys can see what I'm talking about. He basically says that Peter is adding to a police state by fixing the towers and adding modifications. But the thing is, what I bring up is that the modifications are on his end. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. This video isn't about me, at least not fully. There is another YouTuber by the name of Colin who decided to make a video basically debunking SK's entire video, all of his arguments, everything. Well, almost everything. He tackled the most important points of his video and even took apart some of the nitpicks that he had that just were nonsensical. Like, I didn't touch on this in my video, but he also complained about the backpacks and the collectibles and shit. Like, those are just, like, gameplay collectibles. They don't have that much to do with the actual story. And he also complained about how gameplay made Spider-Man look like he was killing people when, like, the game doesn't confirm that at all. I really highly suggest you guys look at this video because it's a masterpiece. It breaks down all of SK's major points and even pokes a bunch of holes in SK's arguments, even pointing out that SK cuts out the context of a lot of things that happen in the game to fit his narrative point. And I don't know how I didn't realize this when I did my video tackling one of his points, but yeah, he's right. I actually got an indirect mention when Colin got to the towers and said the exact same thing I said.
Talk about the existence of Oscorp surveillance towers, we need to address what it means for the world and the implications of how Spider-Man modifies them. Spider-Man is asked by Yuri to fix the Oscorp surveillance towers that have a city-wide reach. Yuri tells Spider-Man that the NYPD started using Oscorp surveillance towers this year. Spider-Man is aware of the concept of police corruption, and his most recent and notable example would be Wilson Fisk's Empire. These surveillance towers are meant to help direct police attention to crimes, but Peter modifies them. He states,
I bet I can modify these towers to track more than just crimes.
So initially, the Oscorp towers were only tracking crimes. It was Spider-Man who decided to modify them to track even more stuff, perhaps private material.
He was modifying these towers for himself, not the rest of the police. And Yuri also makes no mention that the towers are tracking anything new.
Here I come.
And I don't understand how SK didn't think of this himself while replaying the game, but the towers are only modified on Peter's end. Yes, you do hear him say, I bet I can modify these towers to track more than RFID signals. What he's saying is that will only be on his end, because after the second tower, we then find a backpack. Yes, he does complain about the backpack soon after this clip, just before I cut it off. But only Peter can see these modifications, not the police. Now, some people are probably having a hard time understanding why I've come to that conclusion. Well, for one, we never actually hear the police or Yuri even say anything about it, which leads me to believe the modifications Peter made, the police do not have access to it, or else Yuri would question Spider-Man about it. You'd actually hear in-game dialogue or even random police conversations remarking on, hey, we can see extra shit on here now. Whoever fixed the towers must have given us a wider range of access, or something along those lines.
But also tap into the privacy of your everyday citizens. RFIDs have serious security and privacy concerns because they can easily be abused.
Hidden readers. Tags can be read from a distance, not restricted to line of sight. By readers.
Yeah, this whole argument is just based off misleading misinformation. Spider-Man states, I can modify these towers to track. Keyword track. These towers aren't RFID readers. And Spider-Man also doesn't gain the ability to get people's personal information tied to RFID signals after modifying these towers. Because Peter doesn't even know what his backpack is when the signal pops up. All he gets is a ping and location of the RFID tracker. He makes no indication or remark saying that they gave him personal information, saying something like, oh, this is Peter Parker's backpack. And also, if Peter could track people's personal information with this, don't you think he would have used this a lot throughout the game to track certain people? If he could really get personal information on people through these towers, then why doesn't he? Oh, it's because he clearly fucking can't. And either way, this whole argument is just stupid because, like I mentioned earlier, Peter modifies these towers for himself. Yuri makes no mention that these towers are tracking anything new. He also states in a live stream with his friends where someone else makes the same point against him that
Food in the 7 seas!
There I am.
because of a side mission this game has, this confirms his point that Peter also modified the towers for the police as well. And he says that because Peter says, I prefer using these towers as the term sharing in that little conversation they had. Just go look up the side mission on YouTube if you want to see the whole conversation. But he thinks that Peter confirms this point when he brings up the word sharing, when the definition of sharing is to have a portion of something with another or other things. Like, you know what I mean. There's also many different forms of sharing, like that's pretty common sense. But anyways, the tower worker states that he is piggybacking off their system. She knows that he is using their system that is already in place, so even if Peter didn't make his personal modifications to these towers for his own personal use, he would still be piggybacking off the system that's already in place. And once again, this tower worker also makes no mention that he's modified these towers. And being how open she was to Spider-Man throughout their conversation in this side mission, I think she would have definitely made a remark that he modified the towers. But she doesn't, because he doesn't modify the towers for the police. And these towers are also not RFID readers. They track radio signals. What is an RFID? A radio frequency. Only these towers are only using these things for crime data. And it's also not very far-fetched to believe that Peter has encrypted his modifications on his end so that the police don't have access to these modifications, as he is a literal fucking genius, so it's not far-fetched to believe that he encrypted his end at all. And once again, even without making the argument that Peter only modifies these towers for himself, it really would not matter if he allowed the police to track anything new with these towers, because as I've mentioned, Peter cannot gain personal information on anybody throughout this game. He shows that in not one single fashion, form, or any way. All these towers can do is pick up RFID signals, not read them. And one more thing, just to keep further backing that this was a dumbass point for him to make. Technology in video games, or fiction in general, does not always work the same as it does in real life. So your argument that RFID readers in real life and what they are capable of is still not applicable to fiction. Just like how Spider-Man's web shooters wouldn't work in real life. Just like how Batman's grapple gun wouldn't work in real life. Just like how Iron Man's suit would not work in real life. Just like how tritium could not actually make a small sun in real life. And another thing about these towers is something that people try to use against Spider-Man's character in this game. Like, oh, Spider-Man supports the surveillance state. Like, Spider-Man has no control over this. And instead, he's using these towers for his own personal use so that he can use these towers to help the city out even more.
And the exact same thing I said was that only Peter can see the modifications he made to the tower on his end. The police can't see it. And even in my sequel to that video where SK brought up like a side mission that apparently blew holes in my video, if anything, it reinforced my point. And it's funny because SK put out a tweet where somebody actually mentioned me, but not by name. But SK actually mentions me by name. I'm gonna show you what the tweet says right now. He says, "Oh, you're talking about ArachnidYouth, the guy who quite literally threw insults in his video, hence why we didn't have the same restraint we'd have for someone like probably Spider-Man who didn't insult anyone." And then one of my friends commented on it saying skill issue. This is a very funny moment for fans of the channel who actually bothered to watch both of those videos. And anybody who actually watched my video, at least the very first one, can attest to what SK is saying is pure bullshit. The very first video I did, I was very cordial with him and even threw him a bone stating, okay, hey, maybe you're just thinking too much about it. You think it's this, but in reality the answer is just so obvious that you're thinking, oh, it can't be. That can't be the answer. But nope, like he can't accept that. He can't accept that argument in good faith. And when he did his live stream with his friends, by the way, tearing my video apart, they didn't bring any good points. And so I'm like, oh, so you want to be that way, huh? So I did my second video where I was a lot more brutal and visceral, and I had a more thought out response. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna basically blow more holes in your argument and then roast you afterwards. Because if you're gonna do me like this, then I'm sorry, the gloves are just slightly coming off. Yeah, he thinks I was insulting him in the first video. Even the second video, I was taking it easy on him. I was just making a joke and spectacle out of it, while also just making sure, like, people understood. Like, my point is that Peter, the towers are modified on his end. But yeah, Colin says the exact same thing, and even brings a lot more points to the table that I didn't even realize about. Like how RFID, what SK used in his video, like that definition of RFID signals. Yeah, that's misinformation. Like, RFID signals don't actually give people information, private information on people that's not already readily available. Because he points out when Peter fixes that first tower and he gets pinged for the backpack, he doesn't realize it's a backpack. How did I not realize that? That's actually hilarious. But I also find it even more hilarious that SK is still molding about my video to the point to where he's basically watering down my own criticism of that. Mind you, 1 point in that entire 2-hour long video. I talked about 1 point, and he's still molding over that. This man can't handle criticism to save his life. You know what's really funny about all this? In Colin's video, debunking SK's video, Colin says the exact same shit that I said in that video. That SK is thinking way too much into it. He's looking way too deep into it, so he's coming up with all these problems that don't even exist in the game world to begin with. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. If y'all want to actually go back to those videos, I'll link them off down below. I will point out in the second video, I didn't watch the live stream all the way through. I was skimming through it till I could see all their points. And I do make a mistake in that video saying that they didn't watch it all the way through. So that's a bit of an oopsie on my point. Still doesn't take away from my point in the video overall, but just a minor oopsie on my point. But yeah, it's so funny that, like, finally somebody decided, fuck it, I'm going to take the time out of my life and debunk this entire video. That takes dedication, and that takes a lot of effort that even I didn't have enough heart to do. But then again, I did just do a 40-minute video talking about a Spider-Man mobile game nobody cares about, so it's probably in there somewhere. But anyways, I just wanted to briefly talk about that. And what do you guys think down below? Like, do you find this situation as funny as I do? Like, it's hilarious. SK can't handle criticism. It's literally just the title of my original video. SK and the dilemma of thinking too much. I was right. People laughed at me and I was right. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. I don't know. I'll probably do a live stream later today since that don't work. Anyway, see ya.